What's up, Lifepointe family? My name's Ryan, and I'm excited to welcome you to this edition of our midweek online experience. We are in the middle of a series called Undignified, as we look at the life of a guy named David and how we are called to worship just like he did. You know, Pastor Josh is going to talk about what it looks like to be genuine and unapologetic in the way that we worship God. So I hope you'll join me and us as we hear what Pastor Josh has to say.
Have you guys ever met someone who is super exaggerated? They're just always animated, always over the top, man. And you just walk around going, there is no way that this person is this way all of the time. Most of the time, that is how they are, man. They're acting like that. They're being just themselves, and that's just who they are. And what's so cool about these people is, again, generally, they don't care about what other people think. They don't care if people are gonna make fun of them. They don't care if people are gonna poke fun. They don't care if people are gonna talk about them in a certain way. They just don't care. They're gonna be them, and nothing is gonna stop them from being them. And I think as we've been focusing in on worship over these last couple of weeks, it's important to keep that kind of mentality in our worship, right? To be able to have this thing of casting away all of this other stuff that people can kind of put on worship, whether it's manipulating situations or taking things out of context or whatever the case, man. I think that there are so many ways that we can be genuine in our worship and at the same time be very expressive in how we worship. I want to read a story out of 2 Samuel. It's about King David as the Ark of God, as the Ark of the Covenant was being brought back to God's people. David was celebrating this. And so I want to read a little bit of context, and we're going to read from verses 12 through about 22, skipping around in 2 Samuel chapter 6. This is what it says. I want to read it. It says, "Now King David was told, the Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and everything he has because of the Ark of God. So David went to bring the Ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. When those who were carrying the Ark of the Lord had taken 6 steps, he sacrificed a bull and a fattened calf. Wearing linen ephod, David was dancing before the Lord with all his might. And while he and all of Israel were bringing up the Ark of the Lord with shouts and the sounds of trumpets. As the Ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, watched from a window. When she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart." I want to skip down to verses 20 through 22. This is what it says. "When David returned home to bless his household, Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet him and said, 'How is the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, going around half naked in full view of the slave girls of his servants, as any vulgar fellow would?' And David said to Michal, 'It was before the Lord who chose me rather than your father or anyone from his house when he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. And I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by the slave girls that you spoke of, I will be held in honor." There's a few things that we can gather from this interaction between David and Michal, and really just how David responded to this amazing thing happening, not only for him as a king, but just for the people of God in general. And there's 3 things that I kind of want to discuss in how we can model this in our own life. And the first is this. It's very simple. We kind of already even talked about it. And that is this, man. Be genuine in your worship. Be genuine. The reason why David was acting the way he wasn't because he was showing off or trying to be somebody that he wasn't. It was because of his relationship and his emotional connection, his emotional link that he had with God. This was the reason why he did what he did. He knew what was going to be before the Lord, and he wanted to honor the Lord in everything that he did, even if that meant making himself look crazy. I think that we have to let our relationship with God dictate how we worship, rather than just looking over at our friends or seeing trends and being like, okay, well, this person raised their hand, or this person is clapping, or this person's singing really loud, like I have to one up them. I think if we would not get caught up in all of that, and we would just let our relationship with God dictate how we worship, and we were genuine, we would begin to see God move and respond in how we worship in some really impactful ways. And here's the fact of the matter, man. We have too many people already playing church. We have too many people who are being spiritual for clout. There are so many people who are doing this for all of the wrong reasons. So we can't let ourselves become that same way. And if you're watching tonight and maybe you've never stepped foot in a church, I can guarantee you that you've probably seen your friends or videos of people who are young manipulate their own emotions or the situation to not be genuine. And right now, genuine, authentic, like faith is the thing that's going to dictate how people respond and how we lead people into worship. I think that this is just so key. Be genuine in who you are. If you know me, you know I'm a sports fan, and I love sports, especially if you have me watching the New England Patriots, right? We're playing on Saturday night, prime time, ready to go, playing the Buffalo Bills. That's my dad's team. Go watch a couple messages. You can hear me talk about that. And so I'm really excited, man. But here's the problem with being a sports fan and being a passionate sports fan. I'm very emotional as well, right? I cry during movies. I hear stories, I hear songs, I read articles, and I will be in tears. I am a cry baby. And so when you have an emotional sports fan, but you also have somebody who's emotional in general, that mixes for some really, really crazy times, right? If I'm watching a Patriots game and stuff is going well, I am off of the walls, super excited. And if it's not going well, I am so discouraged, man. It is so funny to watch me, and people love it because, you know, the Patriots, it's fun to pick on them. And so they'll talk to me and they'll be like, oh, come on, man, like just cheer up. And I'm like, man, I can't do it. I'm just too emotional. But here's the thing. I take that emotion, and I know that I'm an emotional guy. Like that's just who I am. And because of that, I don't just do it while I'm watching TV or watching a movie or reading a book or anything like that. I'm emotional in my worship as well. I respond to God in emotional ways. And sometimes that looks like crying. Sometimes that looks like jumping around. You know, I've had so many people who look at me and they go, hey man, like, can you just bring it down like a little bit? Or can you just, I'm like, dude, this is just who I am. I'm this way when I'm watching a sports game or watching a movie that I like, in the same way that I worship and I engage with God. It's out of my relationship and it's who I am. Be genuine in your worship. You'll see God move in some really incredible ways. Here's the other thing that you can take a look at in your life and see if this is something that you need to deal with. And that is this: be unconcerned with other people. You see, David, he was dancing and he was jumping around, and he actually took off his royal clothes. He was still clothed. So when McCall says, hey, you're naked, it's not really naked in the same way that we would see. But nevertheless, it was because of his relationship with God that he was even doing that. And so because of that, he was completely unconcerned with what other people were going to say, think, do, anything that they had a commentary on what was going on. He didn't care. He knew that his dancing was appropriate for the context of the celebration. It was a parade. It was a marching band. There were so many things happening, and he was just like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. He wasn't concerned with what McCall thought about him, or anybody else for that matter. And what would it look like if David was concerned? What would it look like if he's dancing around and doing crazy things and he's looking to his left and to his right and trying to just figure out, like, okay, are people responding? Are people making fun of me? Or, you know, all this stuff. Many of us, we worship with an eye cocked to the side to make sure that, like, we're on par with somebody who's maybe more spiritual than us or whatever. We take a look and we're like, okay, well, I'm doing good in context to how they're doing and all this stuff. Are they making fun of me? Are they looking at me? Are they thinking I'm weird or whatever? But man, if we would begin to worship unconcerned with our perception, we can start to worship in freedom. And I think that that is such a cool thing, to be able to worship in freedom, which is really the thing that brings the most glory to God, when we're able to worship genuinely, authentically, when we're able to worship without caring about what people think about us. Authenticity and focus on God are all He really asks for as we worship. So man, we have to give Him that. But it takes being unconcerned with other people to really live in that freedom. It's so key. The last thing here is this, that you have to be unapologetic in your worship. You see, David didn't let Michal ruin his day. He was like, hey, I didn't do this for you. I did this before the Lord. And he goes a step further. He says, and if you think that I was crazy there, if you think I was wild there, I'm going to be even crazier, because I know what God is doing in me. I know the relationship that I have with Him, and you're not going to deter me from that. You know, it could have been very easy for him to look at that situation in retrospect and go, you know what? Yeah, I did kind of act crazy. I'm sorry about that. That was my bad. But he's unapologetic in his worship. People who look at you to make you feel bad or make you feel lesser than somehow because you're worshiping in freedom, or you're worshiping unconcerned, or you're worshiping just in an authentic way, man, don't worry about them and don't apologize for that. Because here's the thing, Michal was so bitter and so angry at David for what he was doing that it actually, that critical spirit, that thing that caused her to constantly be like, hey, you probably shouldn't do that. It actually caused barrenness in her life. And I'm not saying that God cursed her with barrenness in childbirth. That is what happened. I'm not saying that that's what happened, but just spiritually, emotionally, just how she lived her life, man, it was barren because she just had a critical spirit. These people are going to have that. They're going to become their own worst enemy. So don't concern yourself with them. Don't apologize to them, man. They don't understand what God is doing in your life and has done for you. David leading this celebration was an amazing reminder for us that in everything we do, we have to do it with a genuine heart. We have to do it with an unconcerned mind, and we have to do it with unapologetic character. These things are important in how we interact and engage in worship. David was a man after God's own heart. This was who David was, his very nature, his very character. And even he was accused in this story of being too much, being too wild, being too crazy. Don't ever get discouraged when you worship wholeheartedly. Know who you're pointing to. This is so important to understand for our life.
Man, I so love that message from Josh today on what it means to be genuine and unconcerned and unapologetic in our worship. You know, I'm sure you're a lot like me. I get so concerned about what other people think in the way that I dress, in the way that I talk, in the way that I live. And even on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights, when I'm worshiping, I'm so often trying to impress other people rather than just worshiping God. And I'm going to take Josh's challenge to heart this week to be genuine in the way that I worship, and to lift my hands to sing praises, to live before God faithfully in all that I do throughout the week so that He is pleased, not caring what other people think, as hard as that is sometimes. I hope you'll join me in that. And if you recognize me, I just want you to know I miss you. I used to be the youth pastor before Josh was. And just want to say I love you guys. I'm praying for you. I hope things are going well in Arizona. And to those of you I don't know, man, well, you have a great youth pastor and great youth ministry. I love Josh. Tell him the next time you see him how wonderful he is, how much you appreciate him. And if you would do the same to Tristan, Jonah, Keegan, and everyone else who's still serving, maybe names I haven't remembered, some of your new leaders, would you tell them how great they are? Man, you have the privilege of attending online and in person, just a living life with a great group of people. I hope you have a wonderful week. Praying for you, love each and every one of you, and we'll see you next time.